Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here, and thanks for everyone at Open Mic who invited me. I'm actually going to start by turning back the clock a little bit. We're going to go back to 1968, and we're going to look at this gentleman here. Whoops, I went too far. We're going to look at this gentleman here, John Odegaard. Now, John Odegaard had a bold vision. He looked at the west edge of campus, which was just a field, and he said, I'm going to create the Harvard of aviation right here at the University of North Dakota. And you know what? He did. Today, people come from across the globe to study at UND. And the thing is, at one point, this was just an idea, merely an idea. And John Odegaard had a vision, and now we have this amazing school. That's something that's a huge point of pride for Grand Forks. So John Odegaard's idea was bold, and I encourage us to be bold. This is the time for us to be bold. One reason is because times are good. When times are good, that's when you want to be bold and visionary. This is not the time to be complacent. And in Grand Forks, we're doing great right now. We've had twice the job growth of the national average since 2001. Last year, we were first of metro areas in personal income growth. Economic development expert Mark Schill, I think, really states this well when he says, the oil boom helps, but Grand Forks is growing on its own merits. This is a well-run, fundamentally sound community. The other reason I think we need to be bold is because we're in the midst of a paradigm shift. Our cities are changing. There's this move towards walkable urban neighborhoods that's happening all across the country. And a lot of cities are answering this call and changing how they build their cities. I want to give you a few examples. I'm going to start with Bismarck. So Bismarck's going real bold. Bismarck recently hired a Portland firm to come in and do this a real visionary downtown master plan for them. It includes a whole new street design. They're going to have new lighting. They're going to have art, sculpture. They're going to have a ton of housing and retail. And then they're going to have this beautiful new depot plaza. They're even talking about doing a bus trolley between the downtown and the Capitol. So they're really thinking bold, and they're predicting that they'll get $1 of public investment for every $1 of public investment, they'll have $14 in private investment. And that's already happening. Just recently, a developer announced a $300 million project that's going to be a large residential and retail project geared towards young professionals. So they're doing great things, and you gotta love the attitude here and the ambition. They're very ambitious down there, and they're doing great things. Another city in our weight class, Fort Collins, is going bold. Fort Collins last year opened up the Mason Street corridor, and what this is it combines their downtown, Colorado State University, the Foothills Mall, and their South College retail area. And what they've done is they've used bus rapid transit, which is a lot like light rail, and they have this beautiful corridor that serves the middle of their city, and it's just transforming Fort Collins. They're expecting a regional impact economically of $150 million, and they're talking about building 3,300 new housing units right in the middle of their city, accessible by transit. It's just amazing for Fort Collins. And I want to talk about some of the drivers that are moving cities to invest into their cores. Think about it. The last 60, 70 years or so, we've been designing our cities around the automobile. And what we're coming to find is that people are happy and our cities work better when we design around people, when we design to a human scale. So we're in the midst of a paradigm shift. A big driver of this is funding, quite frankly. What's happened is we're driving less, and we've gotten to the point where the vehicle miles traveled by Americans actually peaked in the last 10 years. And so we don't get the money coming in from the gas tax that we used to. And so what that means is that cities can't rely on the federal government to help fund all the road and highway structures the way that we used to. And so that means that cities have to be really smart and strategic about how we do our urban planning and design. And luckily, the investment in the middle of our cities, the mixed-use type development like in our downtowns, is actually really good for cities' pocketbooks. One of my favorite urbanists, Joe Minicozy, who I had the pleasure of meeting, did a study in his hometown, Asheville, and he looked at the Walmart compared to a downtown building, and you can see just how much more bang for the buck the city is getting on per acre on that mixed-use development than they do on a auto-oriented development. And I want to be careful here. Like I'm not going to do a whole talk where we just bash sprawl. That's not the point here. The point is simply that there's changes occurring, and we're definitely moving in another direction. And we've got to be careful not to fall into that trap where we just design our cities and do things because that's the way we've always done them. Because things are definitely changing. I think this chart describes it best. We can see that the pendulum is swinging. And in this decade, we've moved to more of a mix. So we're still doing some suburban type style development, but we're also doing a lot more of the downtown and the mixed use type of development. And the big driver for that is just demographics, quite frankly. There's more singles and couples. In the 1950s, 50% of households had children in them. Today, 25%. Now, it's a little higher in our neck of the woods, but it's been dropping over the decades, and it's going to continue that way. In the next 20 years, we're expecting 86% of households will be singles and couples. Now, concurrently, we're having a cultural shift, too. Think about it. Millennials, we grew up to, like, Seinfeld, Sex and the City, How I Met Your Mother, right? Like, all these shows that took place in the city. We like to live close to where we work. We like to be able to walk to the coffee shop. So there's kind of that cultural shift going on. The interesting thing, too, though, is the baby boomers are shifting as well, right? The baby boomers are becoming empty nesters, and a lot of them are looking to downsize. And so you have these two huge generations, the biggest generations of American history, 50% of the population, and they're moving towards the walkable urban type of development. And what's happening is the housing supply hasn't quite shifted enough yet. So it's not matching that demand for the walkable urbanism. And the demand's definitely there. This is a poll from National Association of Realtors. 60% of people favor a mixed-use neighborhood. That requires less driving between work, home, and recreation. I think this quote really sums it up. It's about the dream neighborhood. So the other driver, I think, is the environment. Climate change is driving cities to build more sustainably as well. Now, I want to talk about, we've talked about some of the drivers, and I want to talk about how do we build cities for the 21st century. We're past the industrial age, and we're now into the 21st century knowledge-based economy. And I think the urbanist John Rene describes it real well when he says, we want to build networked, livable communities, and these are networked both into the internet and multimodal transportation systems, and they're also networked into the professional economy. And it's kind of a fancy way of saying we want to build productive places, places that people live, places that people work, places that have a mix of uses, and places that have a lot of social value, but also a lot of economic value. Now, I want to share an idea with you, a bold vision for Grand Forks. I'm excited to share this idea, and I'll tell you what, it's kind of a big visionary idea. You never know what's going to happen. With big ideas, they're never easy. But I think this is something that's worth the effort. I think this is an idea that could transform Grand Forks and take us to the next level. The idea is a corridor to connect the city. It starts downtown. It connects with campus, and then it goes to the Alaris Center and the 42nd Street corridor. What I like about this idea is it connects some of our densest residential areas, so all these shaded areas, downtown, campus, the adjacent neighborhoods, the 42nd Street corridor. These are some of the most dense areas of housing and residential in Grand Forks, and they all happen to be along this central corridor. And then also some of our biggest employers happen to be along this corridor. Downtown is an employment center. The university is an employment center. We have big firms like A2S, Icon, ERC, all along the corridor. So it really does tie a lot of things together. I was hoping to have a nice flyover video for you guys, but I don't have that yet. But there's a flyer out in the lobby, and if you're interested, grab that and either send an email or jump on our Facebook page, and we'll post that video. But I want to talk about one of the things that sort of sets the table for this development, and that's is fast, reliable transit service. The mechanism we'd use in this is bus rapid transit. Now, bus rapid transit's a lot like light rail. It has the look and feel of light rail, but it has less cost because you don't have to build tracks, right? So a few features of light rail that I really like, you can buy the fare ahead of time so you don't sit in a line, like you do on buses. There's nice kiosks at the clean, modern stations. So you always know when the bus arrives. Real frequent service, you're talking every 10 to 20 minutes. So these are rapid corridors. This is good service. Like I said, the nice, well-lit stations, clean, modern vehicles. They really do have that look and feel of light rail. Even the raised platforms, you just get on real easily. And because these are cost-effective and they have such a high level of service, you're seeing a lot of communities develop these around the country. They're becoming quite popular. The corridor would also include a bike and pedestrian path, which provides another transportation and recreational option. It would also spur a lot of economic development. There'd be a lot of housing and new buildings around it. This is actually kind of interesting. This is a rendering of the Amazon building in Seattle. Now, Seattle, this is really interesting because Amazon moved from a suburban office park. They're moving into this new mixed-use development near downtown. And the reason I bring that up is because, as many of you know, one of Amazon's largest customer service centers is right here in Grand Forks. And right now they're stuck out in the industrial park in buildings that are really meant for manufacturing. And the idea of them being on the corridor really excites me. I think they'd be a great fit. The nice thing about these corridors is you can actually leverage a lot of funding to help pay for them. Fort Collins, for example, here, 5% of the project was local, but then they were able to use federal and state grants to help pay for it. You get a lot of housing development when you do corridors like this, which is real helpful. In Grand Forks, we've had a pretty big increase in housing prices in the last few years, and that's just because we're growing a lot. And what's happened is the supply just hasn't kept up with growth. But I think another part of the problem is we're not building the type of housing that young professionals and empty nesters want, and so that puts more pressure on the single family. And so if we had more of this mixed-use development along the corridor, I think that would take the pressure off that single family housing. It would also help people save money. AAA estimates that it costs $9,000 a year to own and operate an automobile. And you think if you were able to ditch that expense, that would be like a $4 an hour raise. In auto-oriented neighborhoods, 25% of the household budget goes to transportation, whereas it's only 9% in a more urban, walkable neighborhood. So that's a lot of disposable income. I was talking to a couple who lives pretty close to the downtown station, and they were saying that if we had the corridor in Grand Forks, because one of them works right on the corridor in an office, and the other's a telecommuter, but he has to drive quite a bit. And they said if the corridor were in place, they'd go from 2 cars to 1, and they'd save a bunch of money. And I told them that'd be great. They'd have more disposable income, so they could take me out for drinks, and we'd all win. That's the important thing, right? We'd all win. These also help with talent attraction. 21st century knowledge workers want the urban amenities a lot of times, and there's a lot of job openings in Grand Forks. There are 1,400 the last time I looked, and there's a lot of competition for talent around our region. And this isn't the end-all be-all of talent attraction, but it's a helpful step. I don't know why my clicker's not working. One of the things that excites me the most, too, is how this could really improve the quality of life for our growing population of new Americans and international students, many of whom don't drive. So this provides a great deal of connection. And the other thing, especially here in Grand Forks, there's that town-gown divide, right? Our campus is 3 miles from the downtown, and oftentimes what happens is people sort of get siloed, and that perpetuates this town-gown divide. Sometimes it feels like we're a town with a university as opposed to a university town. And the corridor can really help connect us. This region, and in Grand Forks in particular, we're doing about as well as we ever have. And economically, our future looks very bright. And I would argue that being the case, you know, this is the time to be bold. This is the time to be visionary. You know, John Odegaard was bold, and now it's our turn to dream big. So let's boldly launch our cities into the future. Thank you.